Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Community Toolkit Stand-Up. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and joining us this week. We have a very special edition of the Stand-Up today because last month we called for, or we held, an election. It was our first election. We were trying to figure out how can we get more people on the team, add more people to the team, but still ensure that it is a community-focused project that is run by the community, led by the community, and so ultimately we came to the decision to have the community decide. And you'll probably see a new face right next to me, this way, Cliff. Welcome to the team.
Hi everyone.
So, Cliff, for anybody who hasn't met you yet, who are you and what do you do?
I'm a freelance .NET developer, mainly mobile and IoT. Mobile is really an IoT device with a bigger screen, really. Not doing that, I fly planes around the world, around Europe now, actually, rather than the world. I've been involved with the community toolkit, mainly the docs with Sean a few times towards the beginning. And want to give back a bit of time now that I've finished doing some flight training stuff. I've got a bit more time that I can give back to the community and help out. So here I am.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for volunteering. We'll work to get you onboarded. I'll show you around the repo and all those things in the upcoming weeks. But actually, we have even more maintainers jumping in right now. Let's add them to this. Add them to the stream. Sokol, Tanya, Konstantin.
Hello.
Hey.
Welcome. Again, so excited to see you, meet you, have you join the team. But let's go around the room. Sokol, welcome. Who are you and what do you do?
Hello, I'm worked in Managed Code. We have some project with MAUI, and I'm very glad to work on MAUI Community Toolkit, and I'm very happy to work with C# and MAUI. It's my very big hobby, and it's now my work.
Love it. So good to meet you. Thank you. And Tanya, how about yourself?
So hello everyone. I also am working for Managed Code, and we have a lot of projects on MAUI. We have 2 startups that is running MAUI, and I'm so glad that we have such opportunity to contribute to this incredible library and framework. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you. Last but not least, Konstantin. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, Konstantin. Hi guys, I'm excited to be with you here. My name is Konstantin and I work as a .NET developer at Managed Code as well. And I mostly work on projects with ASP.NET, Blazor, and MAUI. Yeah, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too. Well, so for everybody joining us today, we do have a bit of a light stand-up in terms of the issues, pull requests, discussions that we normally feature. So I thought we'd take advantage of that to kind of go around the room and we can introduce ourselves as well. So if you haven't met any of us before, I'll go first. My name is Brandon Minnick. I used to work at Microsoft. I was there for about 7 years and recently just jumped over to AWS. But while I was at Microsoft, I spearheaded the effort to stand up and create the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. It mostly just came from a discussion with David Ortnow a couple years ago about, it was just like, hey man, if we want people to start using .NET MAUI, well, most Xamarin developers are using the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So .NET MAUI developers are going to expect something similar, and they probably won't be able to port their apps over until we have something. I was like, so what's the plan? Who's working on it? What's the timeline? And he came back to me. He's like, wish I could help you, but we don't have anybody. We don't have the bandwidth. So that's kind of when I stepped up to create it all, ported the first big chunk of code over from the Xamarin Community Toolkit, at least the easy bits. We still have a couple features like like touch effect and tab view, ones that we certainly still need to bring them over. But yeah, I've basically been leading the team ever since. We are missing a couple maintainers. Gerald and Kim aren't able to join us today, but I know you're listening in, so love you guys, miss you guys, hope everything's okay. But let's kick it over to Vlad. What do you do for the toolkit, Vlad? or what don't you do for the toolkit?
Yeah, hello. So I'm glad to see so many fresh and young faces joining our team. Yeah, nice to meet you all. So as for me, I'm a software engineer from Ukraine, currently working in company DataArt, mostly working with web technologies, ASP.NET web API. However, almost all my free time I spent with .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. Yeah, my journey started from Xamarin Community Toolkit, where I started from open source world and started maintaining some Toast and Snack Bar. After that, .NET MAUI appeared and I continue working with it. So that's my journey in .NET world.
Love it. I mean, we're so glad you're on the team. We were joking around before the stand-up started today. We said if you go look at the stats, the contribution stats on the MAUI Community Toolkit, you'll see Vlad's name right at the top. And we were trying to name all the features that Vlad invented, created, introduced, and we ran out of time. so thankful to have you. Always great seeing you, Vlad. And Jay, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, nice to see you all. Nice to see all the new people here. Welcome to the team. My name is Jay. I work in Samsung company, and I work in a platform team in a Samsung. We have the platform called Tizen that runs on Samsung smart TVs and consumer electronics devices. And what I do there is to make sure that MAUI and .NET works on Samsung platform, so that you can implement the MAUI apps and MAUI Community Toolkit on the Samsung smart TVs and now consumer electronic devices. That's what I do here. And then I'm here to make sure that we are not falling back. We are not behind in Community Toolkit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, that's been one of our mantras is to support everything that .NET MAUI supports. And as soon as Samsung added in Tizen support to .NET MAUI, we immediately reached out and Jay volunteered to join us. And so thankful to have you here. So thankful to have you on the team. So thankful that you wake up at like 4 a.m. just to join us. But couldn't be happier. And Sean, last but not least, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name's Sean. Welcome everyone to the team. It's nice to see you all. So I'm an independent software developer, similar to Cliff. Worked with Xamarin and MAUI for quite some time. I don't know if I should admit it, but I've just swapped over to run some WPF at the moment. But it's all good. Obviously, it's still XAML based. It's not exactly the same, but I do have a passion for doing some of the stuff with MAUI. My contributions tend to be more on the documentation side, at least for the toolkit. But I've got some bits I want to do. I need to take over the camera PR from Pedro as well, which is going to be quite a slog, but we'll get there. So yeah, that's me. Welcome to the team.
Love it. So I tell you what, let's bring up the agenda, and we can also kind of introduce to everybody what our typical flow is here on our stand-up. So we meet once a month, and what we do is we put our agenda here in the repo. Let's zoom in a little bit. This is in our wiki. You can come down to monthly stand-ups, and then you'll find all the history of the stand-ups since, well, at least since January this year. I finally realized you could make these in Markdown, and I had been putting together the agendas every time in Markdown anyways, so figure we might as well share them with the world. But yeah, this is where we meet once a month to talk about what proposals for new features, what bugs, what discussions are active, and pretty much anything we want to highlight and promote and share with the community. And then also, since we are live streaming, we get awesome questions coming in from folks. Like everything was just asking about the localization resource manager. So we can share some information here with the community as well. And in case you're curious, everything I responded to you in the comments here that it's actually proposed for the .NET Community Toolkit. So there's a .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, which is the one we work directly on. But there's also a suite of community toolkits in the organization. And we have ones like the MVVM toolkit. And then there's just a .NET specific toolkit that isn't necessarily for any specific platform. And since the localization resource manager was all about just .NET focused, there wasn't any MAUI or Xamarin bits in it. We recommended it there. So check out that proposal in the link in the comments and join the conversation. So today we have a kind of a slow day. Usually this is jam packed, and we've got we spend an hour and a half in our 1 hour stand up. But today's a little light. But let's jump into it. We've got Sean with the pop-up service. What's going on here, Sean?
Yes, so it's something I played around with a couple of months ago, with the idea of being able to make it easier to show a pop-up from a view model, because obviously it's quite view heavy at the moment. So I played around with it, and then it got to the point of it works, but it's kind of how far we would want to take it. And if I can just load up here so I can remember what I wanted to talk about. It comes around. So initially, I think it was Steve on the chats questioned how we could pass data across to it. And it came across that we might try and use something like query attributable, the interface that comes with MAUI. But having chatted with Shane of the .NET MAUI team, he suggested that he didn't like that. He did not. They might potentially want to move away from my query attributable in the future, or kind of break it down into more specific lifecycle related interfaces. So it's whether we really want to carry on with it, or whether we have something of our own. So I put in a dummy arguments receiver interface, which again, naming is quite difficult. I'm more than happy for a better name, but it's whether we want to be able to continue with that pass data across, get the pop-up service working. I mean, like I say, it all works. It's more a case of just deciding on what we want to expose publicly if we're going to go ahead with it. Because obviously once we implement the interface, then it becomes a breaking change if we ever decide to change things. So just wanted to get people's opinions as to whether we think it is something we do want to proceed with, or whether it's something that's not necessarily worth the effort and we could close the PR down. You're muted, Brandon. I can see you.
Whoops. Yeah, if you could, Sean, guide me through the code here. I'll scroll on my screen. Where do we show off using iArguments receiver?
I would believe it's in multiple pop-up view model above. If it's not, then actually maybe I haven't implemented a sample. Like I say, it's been a while. Let me just double check.
Or is it added here in the pop-up service? Yep. Okay, there it is.
Yes. Okay. So it might be that there isn't a sample there yet. So there would still be a little bit of work left to do. But yeah, so it essentially, when you try to show it, you pass in the view model that you want to show, or the type of the view model. It can then use dependency injection to resolve the view, the pop-up and the view behind it, the view model behind it, pass the data across to the view model, and then show the pop-up. And
Gotcha.
it's a way of exposing how we get the data from the service to the view model, or whatever's backing the view, the pop-up.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea of it. Kind of a bummer to learn about queryable
Right,
attribute. I've used that, and it is kind of like magic, but it works. But yeah, the only thing that jumps out to me here is requiring that for the view model. If let's say I'm showing a pop-up and I don't want to pass anything into it, well, this now would force me.
No, it doesn't. If you scroll up, it's only if you want. It's only the overload that takes in arguments to the.
Oh, well, never mind. I think it looks great.
Okay. It's just a case of whether that's a good name. I mean, we could rely on our query attributable if we wanted to, because that fits with kind of the shell navigation. It's just whether it quite matches, because it's query string related, isn't it? When you're doing a query related navigation in shell, I think that's where the naming came from.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate having a new interface, because also using the iQueryable attribute interface, it might end up with some conflicts anyways, where somebody in their view model is trying to pass information into their view model, but now they need to also have this support pop-up. So yeah, I think this is definitely the way to go for it.
On the other hand, I suggest, if it's possible, just to use .NET MAUI interface, probably, because here we just try to map pop-up and view model and like associate them, so they, pop-up, view model doesn't know anything about pop-up or any UI element that it uses, so it's like independent from it, and we can use any interface there, and we can pass any parameters to view model. So it doesn't matter what UI actually calls this view model. It can be any content page, or it can be a pop-up. So if we can go with the simplest solution and there is no conflicts, probably it's maybe better to use already known interface from .NET MAUI. What do you think?
Is there one, Vlad? I mean, I know we've talked about the iQueryable attribute.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another one you know of that we could leverage that does something similar?
I think, yeah, instead of iArguments receiver, I suggest we can use that interface and just pass that and use that parameter. Also, I don't know if we can use all its like how it's implemented. I mean, like from attribute and the data is passed, so we can use like attribute on the view model and it automatically bind everything. I don't know if it will work out of the box with a pop-up binding.
I don't know. We'd have to check the .NET MAUI implementation to see if they're doing anything,
Yeah.
how they're implementing that. But that could be quite a nice thing, actually, is if you could attribute properties on your view model and that gets populated as part of the same process.
Yeah, the benefit of using .NET MAUI interface, because it's probably more people know about it, and they already familiar with it, and they can just assign it to their view model, or they even have already their own view model that uses interface, and there may be a bit overwork for them to just implement the same interface and pass parameters, the same parameters once again, if they want to use the same view model for different pages, for page and pop-up, for different pop-ups.
Yeah, I'm certainly not against it. I was actually just looking up the .NET MAUI API docs to see if it mentioned anything relating to shell, but it doesn't have any text other than the code. Yeah, I think it is a more common expectation, isn't it? If you're doing navigation in Shell, then you're probably familiar with that interface already. But it means we rely upon it, and if anything changes, then we have to adapt. But that might not necessarily be a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, to be fair, and Gerald's not here to ask him about it, but I know the Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI have deprecated features in the past, but I've seen deprecated features from Xamarin Forms still make it into .NET MAUI, so deprecation might not be, it doesn't mean we have to remove it right away. We might have a couple years, thanks to Microsoft's backwards compatibility. But I'd say, Sean, one option certainly is we could break this up, because I know we've been like the pop-up service PR has been open for a while, and we have we'll go back and forth on a couple things, and we're making progress. But one thing we could do is do it first without passing in any arguments, and then we could dive deeper into the discussion. But yeah, I think this is something that I know a lot of people would love to see, and have been asking for it. So I'd hate for it to get delayed, but
I'm happy to do it in multiple implementations. There's no problem.
Right.
So I was just going to say, the advantage of that is you can walk to it slowly, can't you? You can see what works and what people complain about, and rather than building something that nobody's going to use, you can kind of attack it slowly.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see, Tanya, what do you think? Have you used Pop-up before? Have you seen the Pop-up service PR?
I remember that we, in one of our startups, we used it like something like self-made pop-up, but we haven't used it, I think, pop-up service. But I think we can try to use it in our projects because it seems great.
Yeah, once it's merged into the...
Yeah. Can't use it yet. How about Constantine? We'll put you guys on the spot today. What do you think? Or have you ever used anything like the iArguments receiver or iQueryable attribute that we've been talking about too?
No, I haven't yet, but it looks great. Yep. Can't wait to try that out and see.
Right on.
I think it will be very useful to our project because we wrote our Blazor pop-up and use it. And if we can use MAUI pop-up in future, I think it's very be more useful for our team, I think.
Love it. I was just looking for the proposal, but I don't see it linked here.
There is one. Let me find it.
That's right. I was just looking to give a broader overview of the pop-up service.
I'm sure I did follow the right process.
I was pretty sure I saw one before, but
so maybe it was just a discussion.
Oh, it could have been a discussion too. So, okay. I mean, we're seeing some votes. Here in the room on the stream, and even Steve in the chat is saying that doing it the way Shell does would be nice, which makes sense, intuitive. But yeah, I think probably going forward, Sean, just to get this in, and I think Cliff was saying it that we then see how people are using it and see what their expectations are. Plus, once it's in there and we open up the PR to add in whether it's iArguments receiver, iQueryable attribute, then folks will be more familiar with it and able to join the conversation a little deeper, which will be nice too.
Sounds good. Yep. I'll make a note on that to follow along with that then.
Cool.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Sean. So the only other topic that we have on the agenda today is really just me apologizing for being lazy. But last month we had a whole discussion on adding C# hot reload support for community toolkit.maui.markup, and we said this all looks good and we've got it approved, it's ready to merge, and the last step is just I got to write the docs. And so I totally forgot about this until today, and I haven't written the docs yet. So this is mostly just me saying sorry. But for anybody out of the loop, long story short, we broke C# hot reload, or community toolkit.maui.markup broke C# hot reload, and this'll fix it. And if you've never heard or had to implement C# hot reload before, I'll say it's easy. It's just not super intuitive. But long story short, you just have to add in this attribute into your library, this system.reflection.metadata update handler, and point it to the class that's going to handle the C# hot reload events. And this attribute will fire off a couple methods, one of them being this update application method. And there's another one I forget off the top of my head, but we weren't using it, so I didn't add it here. But yeah, once we merge this in, we'll no longer be breaking C# hot reload for our developers. And the way we've designed this is to essentially allow you to handle that C# hot reload. So one unfortunate thing is that C# hot reload will update the bits. So let's say you're writing your app in C#, you make some changes to the C# code, you click hot reload, those bits will get swapped out under the hood, but something has to tell MAUI to update the display. So if you're looking at your iOS simulator after you click hot reload, after maybe changing something in your view model, it's going to look exactly the same because the .NET MAUI UI essentially just works on iNotify property change. It's waiting for something to tell it to update. And so what we've done is created an interface called the iCommunity Toolkit hot reload handler, which allows you to implement this method called onHotReload. So this method will fire anytime you click the hot reload button, and then in here you can tell it how to update your UI. And I have some examples also in this PR that I've added the sample app, but long story short, everybody's UI is going to be totally different, and there's not really an easy way for us in the toolkit to handle every single case. So for this first iteration, we will kind of defer that to the users. I mean, the easiest thing to do, in my experience, is just to reload the page. So if you click hot reload in Visual Studio, or C# hot reload in Visual Studio, you just go back to the previous page and then navigate back to the page you were just looking at, and that page will be updated. But there are ways to do it under the hood. Like you can tell Shell to do that for you. This is what we're showing off in this example, or you can call like a forced update to tell the layout to update itself. So there's just tons and tons of different scenarios, and we haven't figured all those out. Hopefully the .NET MAUI team under the hood will add in their own hot reload support and do that for us. But this is still coming. So long way for me to say, sorry, I haven't written the docs yet. That's the only thing holding this up. I'll make sure to get on that before the next stand-up. But with that, that's it. That's all we had on the agenda today. Are there any other topics we want to chat about? Or we can also use the time. Typically our stand-ups are about an hour. So we could spend a little bit more time just chatting about the toolkit and what the processes are and stuff like that. Although I will say I'll be meeting with all of you. So Cliff and Konstantin and Tanya and Alexei, I'll be meeting with you one-on-one in the next coming weeks to give you a whole tour of the repo and kind of our process flow and our CI/CD pipeline and all that fun stuff. So don't feel like we have to squeeze it all in here. But what else? What else do folks want to talk about today?
I think one for me then, just because I do get asked it fairly often. I think it was even asked earlier on, wasn't it, about stuff that still has come across from the Xamarin Community Toolkit. What is still over there that we want to bring over to MAUI, or is it just, you know, what has been brought across is what we're going to keep, or is there stuff across there that we still want to bring over?
Good question. So on a very, very high level, this is kind of our submitting a new feature flow. And long story short, we ask folks to open up typically they'll start in a discussion, just because GitHub discussions are made for lots of back and forth and threading and replying to previous comments. Whereas if you open up an issue, it's all very serial. But what we have are a bunch of proposals. So let's see. We search for all the proposals. These are all the features that have been proposed for the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. And if we go to the bottom, these ones that were opened way back in September 2021, these are all ones coming from the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So we went through and I made a proposal for every single feature. And then for the proposals, you can see some already have been approved. We have the safe area effect hasn't yet. But so long story short, some of those features were rejected. Everything was asking in the comments earlier about the localization resource manager. Since that one doesn't have any .NET MAUI bits, we deferred that over to the the .NET Community Toolkit. But yeah, Cliff, this is where you can find all of our open proposals, and yeah, any of these ones that say approved and help wanted, anybody can dive into these and help us start writing the code for them. And then for anything that hasn't been approved yet, approval it takes 50% of the maintainers to vote on it. So usually what'll happen is, let's see, where's a fairly recent one? So,
that's the proposal for the pop-up service.
This one? Oh, you see the pop-up service. Oh, there it is.
Find it before.
Oh, dang. Well, actually, speaking of which, we haven't even voted on this one yet. No. So, all right, we'll get some real live training here. So the first thing we do as the maintainers is when a new proposal is opened, one of the maintainers will be its champion. You're essentially the product manager for that proposal. Being the champion doesn't necessarily mean you're the one writing the code. If somebody from the community jumps in and says, "Hey, Sean, can I write pop-up service?" Sean can be like, "Okay, no problem." And then Sean will help guide them through and answer questions. Again, you're basically the project manager. In this case, since Sean, you opened it and you've already started writing the code, I assume you also want to be the champion.
Yeah.
Fair.
Take that on.
So let's show it like this. So we have this whole board for our proposals, so we can keep track of where everything is, what we've completed, what we're still waiting on documentation for. And this is also where you can see all the submitted proposals and approved proposals. And so what we do once we have a champion, we move this over to the champion column, which can also be done here in the proposal just by moving it to proposal championed. And then since Sean's the champion, we assign him here. So this part's a little confusing because sometimes folks in the community will chime in and say, "Hey, I see there's a help wanted tag, but Sean's already assigned to it." And when that happens, we just have to explain nope, Sean's just the champion. He's our project manager for it. And so he'll be the one helping you out and it's all yours. But so when we move it to these different columns, then the Microsoft bot chimes in and we've got labels that get added, and Microsoft bot will open and close stuff depending on what's going on. But what happens after this, once a proposal's been championed, the champion, in this case Sean, will bring it to the stand-up and say, hey, I've got this awesome idea. I call it pop-up service. Here's how it works. Here's how I've kind of laid out the API. Like, here's some extensions, and here's how we would use it in our app. What do you guys think? And we'll typically chat about it back and forth. Like, what if we do it like this or that? And then we vote on it. So let's see. How many people do we have here today? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And how many maintainers do we have now? So Gerald and Kim aren't here, so that's 10. So we'll need at least 5 of us today to agree to move forward with pop-up service. So let's jump into the vote. So let's see. Let's do a show of hands. Raise your hand if you approve of and want to move forward with pop-up service. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. 7. Oh, Kasi, I see your hand now. It was blurred out. 8. Unanimous. Way to go, Sean. And so when that happens, then we move it over to the proposal approved column. And again, Microsoft Bot will add some labels here. And that is when you essentially now have the go-ahead to start writing the code. We'll say a little delinquent on this, but we have talked about pop-up service a lot. So it wasn't like Sean skipped any steps. But the idea behind this process is to iron out any of or most of the questions we might have before the code's written, to prevent folks from writing a bunch of code, submitting a PR, and not that we very rarely close PRs. We have had to do it in the past, but it's the worst when somebody does all that work, writes all that code, opens the PR, and we go, actually, we can't add this in, and here's why, and we have to close it. So this workflow with the proposals is to help have these discussions ahead of time, answer the questions ahead of time, and by the time it gets approved, we're basically just writing the code. We're basically coming in here, copy pasting the code, and that should be the easy part. So congratulations, everybody, on approving your first proposal. And just in case you're curious, after that, we've got a couple more steps. So the approval will happen. Then that's when we start writing the code. And the only thing I'd say is a little weird about what we do that you might not see on other repos is we also need to ensure that the docs are written before we merge the PR. And yes, we have merged PRs without writing the docs first. Just sometimes we need to push out a release. But long story short, the docs are in the Microsoft repo. So if we go, like if I just Google .NET MAUI Community Toolkit docs, boop, this is the official Microsoft docs website, but it's also where we have our docs. So it's pretty cool because we're basically a Microsoft project without necessarily having all the rules and being constrained by Microsoft's engineering flow, and we don't have to worry about shareholders. But because of this, let's see, if I go back to, let's see, we'll just go to a completed proposal. That'll be easy to show that off. If I go back to a completed proposal, I can show you what those docs PRs look like. Oh, goodness. I have to go far back in time. Housekeeping. Oh, it's because I'm looking at pull requests. Okay, now let's go to a completed proposal. Okay, cool. So yeah, pop-up, close async. So we want to make sure that we cover every implementation for all the platforms. So Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, Windows, Tizen are the ones we support. So every feature has to support that. Unless you have a really good reason, like we've got some discussions going about some desktop-focused proposals, which obviously wouldn't appear on mobile. And and obviously we want a unit test. We have you add a sample to the sample app that shows off the feature, but documentation. So the docs are over here in the Microsoft Docs repo. So we have Microsoft Docs /Community Toolkit. And so this is where we have to write and open our docs. They're all done in Markdown. They're fairly straightforward. And we're lucky to have Sean on the team, because any weird quirk in the docs, Sean's already figured it out. He's gone through the pain of learning how the Microsoft Docs work, and he'll help shepherd us through our docs PRs. But I'd say this is kind of the weirdest part, because you'll complete the code kind of like I have here, but then we approve it and we say don't merge it because it's pending documentation. So little weird quirk, but it's essentially the way that, or a lesson that we learned from when we were working on the Xamarin Community Toolkit. We would just forget to write the docs. You know, it's really easy to review the code, approve the code, merge it in, push out a release, push out another release, and then, you know, a year later, somebody's asking about, hey, I can't find the docs for tab view. Oh, shoot, we totally forgot. So this is kind of the new process we added in to make sure that we don't release a feature unless we have a doc written for it. But so I know I just threw a ton of information at you. Let me pause. Cliff, Constantine, Tanya, Oleksii, what do you think?
I really like this rule that you first write documentation and then you make pull requests. It seems very cool and very logic that you should firstly write some explanation for what you did.
Thanks.
I agree as well. It also means that it makes it discoverable, because people go to the docs looking for how do I make this work, and then they see a tool that's in there. So, oh right, that's what I need to use, and they'll go off and actually use it. Otherwise, it just sits there in code and no one knows it's there. So you know, it's a great way to do it. And also, if you're writing the docs as soon as you finish writing the code, the docs will probably reflect what the code can do rather than what you can remember it doing when you try and write them a year later.
Right. I will say one recommendation I have is to wait to write the docs until the pull request is approved. Because there has been a couple times, like actually this past month, we merged a pull request that we spent almost the entire month just figuring out what to name the new features. Like, let's see.
Theme stuff.
It was
app theme resource.
Yeah, it was just way harder than it should have been. But yeah, if you look at, is it app theme? If we check out there we go. So this one, Gerald.
You're not sharing anymore if you're trying to show us.
Oh, whoops. Ha! How about that? Yeah, so basically Gerald finished it. We were reviewing it. We're like, yeah, this looks pretty good. And he's like, but just a question on what do we name it? And then we just kept throwing ideas, and you can see like Gerald did some commits and he tried something and it didn't really work. So he tried something else. And then we went back and forth on naming, and then I tried something and it didn't work and it broke the build, but we finally got it in. And after all that's done, Gerald's got to go back and update the docs PR because we landed on a different name than what we started with. So yeah, typically what I'll do anytime I'm writing code that's going to add a new API layer or a new API to the library is just wait until this gets approved and it's ready to merge. Then I'll write the docs just so I don't have to remember to come back and update them. But that's life, right?
I don't know if it's worth adding as well as the fact that the docs PRs don't merge until we release the feature, not necessarily merge the code changes.
That's a great point.
That's why the app theme is there in draft, because we haven't actually released that feature yet.
Yes. So another lesson learned. As soon as we merge these docs, they're live. Microsoft, credit where credit's due, their system is quick. So we accidentally merged some docs too soon in the past. Because it's really easy to come in here and, Sean's approved this, so it's ready to be merged. And then we accidentally merge it, and all of a sudden we've got a feature in the docs that doesn't exist in the library yet. So what we started doing is we just opened our docs as a draft. So as a draft PR. And then when we finally approve it, merge the code, release it, then we can graduate this to being ready for review. But, if you forget and you open a PR for the docs and forget to submit it as a draft and we accidentally merge it, we can always revert it too. We've
done that a couple of times. We know how to do that.
So,
I guess I had one further question on the docs. I don't know if this would be more API docs, which is a whole other topic, but would there be any value in actually including some form of version information to say when the feature first became available?
It's not a bad idea.
I suggested this a while back actually as well, on some docs for just .NET docs, not just for MAUI, just for main .NET, because I think it's quite important to know when things become live. So if you're you're stuck on an older version for some reason, you then know actually in the docs it's saying, well, this is in version blah, and we're stuck on that version. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Does that mean you're volunteering, Sean? Or we've got 4 new volunteers in the room.
I don't mind. I mean,
what?
Yeah. I don't want it to generate a lot of effort to have to maintain. So it's not like specifying the live version all the time for each of the pages, but just some kind of information regarding as to when the feature first became introduced, whether there is benefit in that, or some statement somewhere just to say, well, the docs are the latest version, but the problem is, what is the latest version? I don't know how far we want to go with it.
Yeah, and that's my only concern is maintaining that, because somebody could go through and retroactively write it up and we could have it going, but we just want to make sure we would add that into the process somewhere, and maybe that's part of our docs review workflow is we don't approve a doc until it's updated that new feature. But yeah, for now, I think the source of truth on that is just the releases page on the GitHub repo. So if you jump into the releases, then you can search here for, well, I guess it's not a great experience, but I don't know. Let's see if I type in pop-up in the search bar. Does that do anything? Oh, that literally does nothing. Is that supposed to do something?
It's highlighting the text.
It highlighted them.
Filtering, yeah.
Okay, so that's basically just like Control F.
Although it doesn't scroll to it, so actually it's less helpful.
Yeah. All right. So not a great experience. But
is that search box just for the release, so you can find which release? You can type in your release number, like 5.2.1, instead of then it will take you to that part. Is that what that's doing?
No, it literally looks like it's just find and replace, or just Control F, just find, because if I type in 5.2.1, then it highlights everywhere in this page where the number 5 is, the number 1 is, a dot is. So I guess that search is pretty useless. Cool. Well, I'll tell you what, let's we can put a pin in that. We can think about it, because we're coming up on the top of the hour, and we do try to keep these scoped to an hour. But before we go, Cliff, Konstantin, Tanya, Alexei, what questions or thoughts do you have before we split up? I'll be following up with all of you in the next coming weeks, and we'll dive into the code together, and we'll walk through a bunch of stuff to get you up to speed. But any other questions before we depart for today?
So I have one question about unit tests, and like we should write tests for all platforms like iOS and Android and so on, yes?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So right now we're just writing the unit tests for .NET, so not platform specific. Like if, let's see if I can do this on the fly. If we look at our unit test project, the CS proj file just targets, in this case, .NET 7. There are some rumblings about creating device-specific unit tests. I personally don't know how to do that. I know one of our former maintainers, Pedro, was looking into that. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Is this the new library that Pedro wants to create for the community toolkit? Was it a MAUI specific or a platform specific unit test project for MAUI?
I think that's where he was going with it, yes. I know Matthew of the .NET MAUI teams created a repo recently with the device runners in it. So I don't know if they're preparing that to then push it over or if it's going to live there. But that was the discussion, I think.
Cool. And Pedro's here in the chat. What's up, Pedro? So I guess stay tuned, everybody, because we are, well, I'm not doing anything. Pedro's doing everything. Pedro's looking into creating a new community toolkit library that would allow you to do unit tests for iOS specific, Android specific, etc. features. But yeah, Tanya, it does make it a little weird because, yeah, there's a whole bunch of code we just can't unit test yet. But we try to write the unit tests for everything we can. My rule of thumb is every API we add should have a unit test associated with it. And also, nowadays, I found it's pretty easy because you can just go to ChatGPT and you have to copy paste the code, but you copy paste the classes that you added into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you write unit tests for me and what are we using? We're using XUnit. So you say, write some unit tests for me using XUnit and C#, and it'll just give you the unit tests. That 100% coverage. They're not perfect, but the time I did it, it was pretty easy just to go in there and edit some of the syntax errors instead of having to, come up with all the unit test ideas for all the edge cases. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Pedro's able to come up with. Pedro's been working with Kim Philpotts, also on our team as a maintainer, because Kim, I always called him Phil. Kim Philpotts, he is a Microsoft employee, and he works closely with the other community toolkit library owners. So there's a WinUI community toolkit, there's the MVVM community toolkit, there's just the .NET community toolkit. So Kim's our representative there, and yeah, maybe hopefully soon Pedro will have a new community toolkit. That's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I've just realised as well. Pedro just highlighted the fact I've shared a couple of links on the chat, but they don't come through because I think they assume I'm spamming. So there was one with regards to the XAML hot reload for the pop-ups. Why that doesn't work? There is a discussion. How do I get that out? Can I just share that too?
This one. If you drop it in our private chat here, I can share the link.
Perfect. Yeah,
only the owner of the stream can share links for what I assume is security purposes, and so I can drop it in here while we're still going. But let's see. Well, Sean's finding the link. Do we have anybody see any questions in the comments we can answer? If not, we'll we'll jump off and we'll see everybody next month.
Oh, just one thing just came on my mind. Just to let you know to the new people or anyone out there, Titan could be a blocker when you add a new feature or something. Just let me know, find me. I'll jump right in and I'll help you figuring out, or I'll just start working on it together. So let me know for Titan.
Love it. Thanks so much, Jay.
Thank you for proposition.
Or maybe just learn Titan and help Jay.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and thank you for tuning in and watching. We'll be back next month. It's the first Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Pacific. So we'll see you next month. We'll see you then. And thanks again for coming.